Dave Crane, thanks very much for joining us on the Ideas Lab podcast.
Oh, pleasure to be here, John. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, we've known each other quite a few years, haven't we? Like decade or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say probably around a decade from the Spectrum days.
Yeah. Oh, so I met you at Spectrum Psychotherapy Centre.
We did. I think that's where we met. Yeah,
I think you're
believe
right.
So.
Probably on one of the courses. I did many of them, and I did some of the training stuff. And and then we met through Jerry Hyde, who runs the men's groups.
That's right.
That we're in. Yeah, I remember sharing a tent with you and your beloved dog on one of his retreats, which is quite amusing. And having to kick your dog out of my sleeping bag when I came back late one night.
He'd found a comfy spot that wasn't mine, that he knew he thought he'd take his chances on yours.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's our history, full disclosure. And what's interesting, though, is that you've created this amazing app that I've written about in my brand new book, which is being published in July this year. And I thought it'd be interesting to get a bit more detail than we could fit into the book about how you managed to create what is now basically the number one stop smoking app, at least on iOS. Is that right? Do you want to give us an update on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're the number one app across both platforms. We're certainly on number one on iOS and have been for a number of years. With Android, the positions fluctuate a little bit more. But I think what we've got that none of the other apps have is a sort of rigorous scientific focus. So we incorporate a lot of best practice when it comes to smoking cessation, and we also have evidence that the app is effective. So it's not just enough that you create or you just bring in the techniques that seem to work in face-to-face interventions. When you're trying to change behavior in an app, you need to know that the implementation of those techniques in the form that you've done it is effective, is helping people stop smoking in our case.
Yeah. And
that's what we do.
I'm a big fan of that because we can all have theories and instincts and hunches about what actually works in psychology and in habit change. But it's good to really look at the data and see what really works. And often it's not what you think it is. But how did you, if we rewind back to the beginning to cover some of that story, how did you come up with the idea of creating an app to stop people smoking?
My background is in technology. So I've been around sort of websites and since 1995, and have always been interested in using technology to create positive change. So I've had a debating website. I had a cannabis legalization website for a while, but could never find that happy balance of an app that made money, but also felt like it was doing some good. So this kind of win-win scenario. And then I spent 20 years doing this, but I decided that maybe I should have a break. So I went off. I wanted to do something very different. I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere with the old approach, and so the other love that I had was psychology, and I've been interested in psychology from way back in those Spectrum days and before then. Actually, in primary school was when I first started being interested in behaviour change because I was bullied, and I thought, well, maybe if I can find a way of changing my behaviour, I can get the bullying to stop. And that I actually did it in ways that were quite effective at the time. And so I guess that kind of created this fascination for me in the ability that I had to change my circumstances by changing myself. But I never felt that confident in pursuing psychology as a career in my 20s or my 30s, or my 40s for that matter. I just felt like I needed more experience. I needed more so much of my life I'd had these great ideas in my 20s and then been proven wrong in my 30s that I think I wanted just a bit more life experience before I was talking about change to other people. So it was actually in my late 40s that I did the Masters in Psychology. There's this step away from technology into this old love. And I'd just given up smoking at the time. So when I was asked what I wanted to do for my dissertation, the idea came pretty quickly, really, just basically to combine that knowledge of technology, the focus on creating products that people like using and can be of benefit to people with this scientific focus on psychology and evidence, and see if I can combine the two into a product that might help people stop smoking.
Yeah, and that's a great idea, to combine several things you're good at or interested in. And, the fact that you took your passion for psychology and then everything you learned in the masters and then added it to technology stuff, that means it's quite difficult for somebody to compete with you, because this is what Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert, calls talent stacking. So you've got multiple areas of expertise, and maybe you're not the world's best in any of them. I certainly feel like that about most of the things I do. But you layer them together and you actually create a competitive advantage, which is really quite difficult to get over for somebody else. So that's a great model. And you, from what I understand, you created this app kind of not as a commercial venture during your psychology masters, but as a way of getting research candidates to produce data on what works to stop smoking. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It didn't start out with the intention of being a business. It was, okay, we've got a question about smoking that we may be able to answer. And actually, the idea of the app changed from its first iteration into what was actually reduced. So firstly, it was just going to be, can we gather data about cravings? Can we try to shed more light on what is happening when someone is craving in the moment? Because this is the thing that apps provide over traditional forms of gathering data, is that you can get much more contemporaneous data, much more clear. Oh, I'm smoking right now, so I can tell you what's going on right now, rather than trying to remember 4 hours ago when you'd probably forgotten. But then, as I thought about it more, what I wanted to create was a plan for stopping smoking. A few years before that, I'd run the marathon. And this, I used to hate runners. I used to hate running. I used to sort of laugh. I used to take the piss out of runners, excuse my language. But, I had this saying that you never see a happy jogger. So, the idea that I would then go and run a marathon was ludicrous, because I could never get onto it. In primary school, I remember hating cross country. But I ended up needing to, because I was really overweight, and it was clear that my Wii Fit wasn't going to get rid of the pounds that I needed it to. So a friend said, well, listen, you should do the marathon, because the training that you'll have to do is what will get you to lose the weight. And I thought, I quite like this idea as a challenge. It's something that I'd never considered myself doing before. It is one of those kind of measurable achievements that you can say, I've done this. It's got a clear point of there's a clear goal to it, which is very important. And something I thought was beyond me. And the only way that I got from running, not being a runner at all, 1 minute was my first run in October was a minute long. And then by the middle of March, I was able to run for 4.5 hours without stopping, because I followed a plan. And because this plan was so well put together, and it was like, it took you, the first week, you don't have to run very far, walk as much as you want to. And then the next week, just do a little bit more. And it was scaled in such a way that every week felt slightly out of reach. It was a bit of a stretch, but it wasn't too much of a stretch. So I thought I could do it. When I did it, I felt proud about having achieved it. So it was very reinforcing, but it wasn't too much that I didn't think, oh God, I never want to go back there again. And it was that idea, that kind of structured plan, that I trusted. And this was the other key thing, because I trusted that there were people who were less fit than I who had followed this plan and done it. So I thought, if I can just follow this plan, I'll be okay too. And that's what we wanted to bring into this app. And that's what we ended up testing in the randomized controlled trial, which is whether these series of daily tasks given to people over the course of a month could help people stop smoking. And we found that actually they doubled your chances of quitting at 3 months, which is around the same effectiveness as nicotine replacement therapy, which is considered to be one of the. So it's a pretty good effect size. It's one piece of data, so we've got to be very careful about claiming too much about these things. But it's an indication, I think, that the principles work. That people will follow a program if they will trust in it, if they will believe that this thing is going to help them. And so if you can put those two conditions in place, you might have something that'd be quite effective.
Yeah, and at what point? I mean, At what point did you think like you could see, okay, this app is really taking off? Because initially you're only trying to get a few hundred people, just to get this data that you needed for your masters. And then at what point was it obvious that it was going to go beyond that and that this was really working?
It was almost the first day. I mean, we only had one data point then, but we had about 28 downloads on the first day. And I don't think we were really expecting any at all, because it was quite a competitive landscape. There was already 100 or so apps that were available to other people. So the idea that we could kind of get any of that quickly was a surprise. And we thought, oh, maybe we've got something here. And then I think I can't remember how many we got in the first week, but I think we probably got 100, 200 downloads in the first week. And the target was 500 for the whole 3-month course of the program. And then we started getting feedback from people saying that they liked what we were doing and they found it a really effective app. And that was again, very reinforcing. And it was those early indications that, oh, okay, yeah, people seem to be liking this, as evidenced by the number of people who were downloading it and what they were telling us and how they were reviewing it. That made me think, oh, okay, maybe there's something more to this. So yeah, it's getting that kind of feedback from users, I think, and it was having a product out there that we could get that feedback on. Because if you've just got an idea, if you're not getting feedback from the people who are going to end up using it, then it's not really tested.
Yeah, and I mean now it's had how many downloads is it?
4.5 million.
Yeah, not bad. 4.5 million people. But when you put it out right at the beginning, then those first 30 people, first few hundred people over the course of the week, how do they find out about it? Did you just put it on the App Store, describe it, and then kind of, go home, to have dinner or something? I mean, did you do something to promote it?
So we looked at the basic principles of App Store optimization. And so this is just on Apple. So keywords are very important on Apple. You've got 100 characters. You don't want to, things like, if I remember correctly, Apple pluralizes words for you. So you don't need smoke and smoking. You just need smoke. I think then if you have no and smoke and no and cigarettes, it will put those, two together as well. So you don't have to have no smoking and no cigarettes. So you kind of, you work out how to use the character limit in the best possible way. And you work out which keywords to use based on what you think people will search for. And then you make sure that the landing page is, the description is well written, that the screenshots are attractive, that there's a call to action, the kind of basic principles of trying to promote a marketing product that you would do. So we just did those, and I think we did those. Well, we did those well enough that we got the first few users on board. And then once we got those few users, and once we started getting emails in, we nurtured those emails, and so we would kind of respond very quickly to any support requests, be super helpful and friendly, and then once people said, "Oh, thank you very much," we would then ask them to leave a review, so that we tried to create this sort of relationship where people would start to thank us, and again that kind of allowed us to move up the search rankings and have this positive feedback loop where people can see, "Oh, you're being effective," and then they rate you more highly and so on.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. So you kind of just be helpful first, and then once people are grateful, actually say, "Can you give a review?" That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's a relationship that we're having with the users, and in many ways, it's a funny relationship because there is a set of expectations that comes from it. You have even a free app. That means that if that free app doesn't match what a user's expectations for it were, not what you said that it was going to do, but what they thought it was going to do, you can get 1-star reviews very easily. And especially with people who are, giving up smoking, who can be a little bit grumpy from time to time. Let's face it, I was one of them.
I've seen how angry those people get in reviews, and I've read 1-star reviews of free apps, which I thought were pretty good, and they are really angry. And I'm going like, you really want a lot for your no money, don't you?
Yeah, I think we have a strange relationship with technology where we can feel profoundly let down by it when it doesn't work in the way that we expect it to, or when it's not obvious how it works. And it can make us feel small as well, because, we feel an idiot because we can't get it to work properly, and then we sort of project that onto the app, and that's so you get loads of negative reviews. And I think this understanding that dynamic and focusing very heavily on user needs and sort of how can we make the nicest possible app. And this is the other thing that I don't talk about very often, but I think is very important, is the attention to detail. So we the language was honed and refined and had a personality, and we thought about each step of the journey and how could we make that nicer. And that's been a constant process ever since. But I think putting that effort in to those small little touches that just make the product feel polished. And I'm sure we'll come to this, we talk about minimum viable product, but a minimum viable product must include a product that's nice to use. It doesn't have to be perfect to use. It will always get better, but it's got to be nice to use. Otherwise, you're not, when you're talking about digital technology, if it hasn't got that experience, then you're not getting the feedback that you need to decide whether the product is good enough or not. It's not, it's not just a tool.
Yeah, just because people talk about an MVP doesn't mean you can put any old crap out there. It actually has to, it has to be valuable. That's the V in minimum viable product. Well, actually, it has to be viable in that it has to be of value to people. And so, it needs to be good enough and enjoyable enough to use. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe another good word for V is valuable, because if it isn't, if the product doesn't have any value to the user, then it's not serving any need at all.
Yeah. And so, just to clarify, although you can download it for free, there's obviously a paid level. Otherwise, you wouldn't be making any money out of it. So, how does that work? Where's the line between? This is what you call the freemium model, right? Where it starts off free, and then if you pay more, you get a premium experience.
So we added the freemium about 2 years in fact. So for the first 2 years, it was just an app, and we were building up nice reviews, and again, just sort of seeing it as a sort of a project we were developing. But then I think it helped as well to have a business partner who was more commercially focused than I was. So I'm product focused. I focus on trying to make the best possible tool. And Greg, my business partner, was sort of more, okay, well, how can we make some money out of this? Which is a very important question to ask. So he'd push me to start selling the app more often, and he'd push me to increase the price a little bit. And I was always glad that he did. And I think there were two things that we did that really worked. And the first was sort of just having an upgrade model. So there was just buy the app one off. I can't remember how much it was. I think it was about £5. A price we haven't changed in actually 7 years, even though the feature set has increased and inflation has obviously gone up. But that brought in a certain amount of revenue, and we found different ways of kind of increasing the percentage of people who would buy the app, partly by promoting it more. And I think this is the thing that I guess I value from Greg and need in a partner, is that someone who believes the product is worth selling. It can put a price on it. And I'll come back to that in a second. But the second thing that we did, and the thing that has created most revenue and the way that this sort of space seems to be going is subscriptions. So when we moved to a subscription model, we sort of trebled our revenue. Simply, we didn't change anything. We didn't add any new features. We just simply added the option to buy the app on a subscription, and we kept on buying the app one off. Both of those sales went up. So the percentage of people who bought the app one off went up a little bit, because I think it created that contrast. And then we added on top of that all these other people who were trying the app as a subscription model, and we used that on a sort of trial basis as well. First week free, automatically converts into a subscription after that, which is the default behavior on Apple and Google. And so I think that the other thing that I want to come back to is just feeling that the product is worth charging for. So what we do now is we try to encourage people to buy the premium features. And I sort of struggle with that because, I'm sort of product focused and want people to have just to get something that they like using. But in reality, the best product for people is the premium version. That's the one that's going to most likely to help them quit. It costs them a bit of money. It costs them like £7 a month. But that's nothing if you're a smoker. That's what you'd spend, in a couple of days, if not a day. So having the courage of our convictions to say, you should buy this product. It's good. It's worth £7. It's going to help you. We can talk about that very confidently. I think is the other thing that sort of allows us that the subtle messaging around how we promote that to be more effective.
That's a really important point. I was talking to Mike Michalowicz last week, who's a New York Times bestselling author, and he says your customers want you to charge them well. They might not know that consciously, but what they want is they want to have a really good experience and get everything they need from you in the best possible form. And it's much better for them to pay properly for that in order that you can supply all of that, rather than them, buying you at a discounted rate or you undercharging and then getting a kind of substandard experience. So I like the idea. It's like, you really ought to just buy it because this is better. It's going to have a lot more impact on you and being able to stand by it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's sort of saying that we know we're the experts here. We know how to help you stop smoking, and it is to use these tools. And it goes hand in hand with this sense, I think, of being a trustworthy organisation, which is something that we sort of, as a brand position, it's where we try to put ourselves, is that you can trust us to say this about that this is the thing that you should be using. And it's not because we're trying to make money out of you. It's not a scam. It's genuinely what we think. And this price of this amount of money, because obviously you can see we're using real experts here, and so it's not just a digital product. It's got people involved, and I think that helps demystify the sense of like, well, why shouldn't I get it for free? We're combating those expectations about digital. But yeah, and then sort of just really saying, look, trust us. If you're serious about it, this is what you should be doing.
And what are the? So I was interested in that because you have stop smoking experts or something. Is that what you call them? And what are they doing?
So they're providing one-to-one and group support on on-demand basis. We're currently 20 hours a day. We're about to move 24/7. So what it means is that if you've got a problem, if you're having a problem with smoking at any point of the day, if you're craving or if you've just got a question, you can reach out to one of our experts and they'll just text you back their answer in a couple of minutes. So it's sort of what we're trying to do is provide a fully comprehensive stop smoking service digitally. So also stuff that you can just look at, the time smoke free, the money saved. You come back into the app and you'll get a little boost about, oh, look, I've saved a bit more money. I'm a bit, a little positive reinforcement there. And then the second is some automated features such as the missions, these daily tasks. There's a quick coach, a chatbot, which people can pull. So they can sort of pull that a bit more when they want. And then we've got the one-to-one, very personalized, human-based support, completely non-judgmental, that just allows people to then get very tailored, specific stop smoking advice.
Wow. So they are getting a lot for £7 a month, because it's not a tiny subscription by the App Store standards. But when you can actually text somebody and say, help, I'm tempted to smoke a cigarette, and get a response within a couple of minutes, for most of the day, that's quite a lot there. That's a great service to be able to provide.
Yeah, and you'd think more people would go for it, but I think there's a whole other problem that we've got to solve, which is about getting people used to the idea of using that kind of support. So how do we migrate people up the support chain? So by virtue of the fact that they're looking for an app to help them stop smoking, they know that they're interested in some kind of support. So how do we help them understand, well, the pro version of support, the automated features are better than the basic features, and then the expert features are better than the automated features. But we learn, that's the process that we're engaged in now. But yeah, we priced it around the Netflix monthly subscription, because it felt like that was the marker point that a lot of people had for a monthly subscription. So if we can come in a little bit lower than that, then we might compare favourably, and we can afford to do it for that at the moment as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
So I'm interested because you've had this great success with an app, and I do get lots of people coming with ideas for apps. And sometimes I have to admit that my heart sinks because I think the chances of, first of all, apps are just very hard for anybody to make work. The challenge is that getting found on the App Store is no small thing. And because apps are normally sold at quite a low price point, you can't spend that much on customer acquisition. These are the kind of problems I've heard of. But more than that, what I worry is that people have an idea. It's like, oh, you could do an app that does X. And I just don't know whether they're the person who should be doing that, because if they're not technical and they don't have subject matter expertise, sometimes they just had a kind of something sounds like a clever idea, but there's no substance in the subject matter or in the technical side. Do you have do people come to you and say, like, I've got an app idea, what should I do, Dave? And if so, what do you say to them? What do you look for in their idea?
I think you're absolutely right. If you've got that subject matter expertise or you're a coder, then your ability to create a minimum viable product is significantly greater. You can do it without either of those two things. It's just harder. And I think it is. What's important with all of these things is, are you actually meeting a need? Does your idea actually meet any kind of need? And if it does, then there are probably other apps out there already. And so the question is, well, what are you going to do that will be different to what's already out there? Now, there is absolutely things that you can do that will be different to the apps that are out there. There's no question about that. But just, can you identify that? Or if you just want to be another Me Too app, then it's not really an idea. It's just a copy, isn't it? So I think what can you add to the existing sort of sphere of apps that exist to solve your particular need, and why is your thing better? Then how can you test that idea and see whether it is actually meeting people's needs with the minimum amount of time and money possible? This minimum valuable product that we come back to.
Yeah, no, I like that. But an MVP always has to be an app, presumably. So in that case, you'd be talking about putting the minimum version of the app on the App Store, presumably.
Well, you could create an HTML5 version of it in a web page that would have reduced functionality, but is easier to build and is cross-platform, and it's probably simpler to recruit people for, because you're not asking them to download anything at that point, just asking them to go somewhere. But that does very much depend on the functionality that the app will have, because there are some things that only you can do natively within the app code itself.
Yeah, I suppose it would be good at least for mocking something up. Maybe there are probably better ways of mocking things up, but at least you could create something that basically would be like a mobile web page for people could go to on their phone. And my friend Shed Samove did this rather famously. He claimed he created an app, which was a dating app that was, I think it was called Shinder. His name is Shed. And, but it was a dating app where the only person you could date was Shed. And you could sign up as a man or woman. And if you were a man, he just goes, hey, I'm not looking for men at the moment, but I'll keep you posted. And then if you're a woman, he would kind of talk to you about whether you want to go on a date with him. And as a result of creating this ridiculous thing, which was actually just, like you say, an HTML5 web page that you went to on your browser, he just got masses of press, which is very good at doing, and got loads of publicity for it. And I realized, like, everyone was talking about it as if it was an app. It wasn't really in that sense.
No, and I think, there is, we talk about an MVP, and I think there's probably stages before that as well. And often entrepreneurs can be a little bit reluctant to talk about their ideas with other people in case someone's going to steal it. And I think that there is a risk of that, of course, but I think it's a very small risk. And when you compare to the benefits about talking about this idea to other people, then there's no question what you should do, I think. And those benefits are fundamentally, one is that when you explain your idea repeatedly to different people, you explain it in different ways. You hone it yourself. You're getting, and other people, if you're looking at the reactions that you're getting, you can see what they they perk up to, or where they sort of switch off. And you can get, if you're sensitive to this, you can kind of get some feedback just in their body language, let alone what they say, from how they respond to the idea of it. And then, if the conversation develops, you can perhaps get some ideas about how they think you could improve it. Some of which will be, not really practical, or just, not doable for right now. Others might be really good and might shape your ideas. So before, you're kind of doing some user testing almost just through words, and then you can get to the point of mocking these things up and showing people. But I think spending, sort of doing as much as you can without minimum investment, without taking that big risk of because apps, to build an MVP, you're probably looking at 10, 20 grand. So it's quite an investment to just take off an idea, when you can do so much more to sort of test the robustness of that idea beforehand. And you can see if you're still excited about it in 2 months' time.
I think that's a really good test. And like you say, if you say things over and over again, and like you say, you pitch it in a different way each time, and then suddenly there'll be one version of how you pitch it, and everyone just goes, "Oh, really? Oh, wow!" Yeah. And it's the same app. And I've seen this again and again, different book titles, different pitches, whatever it might be. The way you describe it's absolutely critical. And the one that makes people sit up and go, "Oh, wow, it sounds like something I need," that is the one that actually indicates where you should be heading for. And that affects what the app becomes, because your little description, if the thing that made everyone sit up and pay attention was one particular aspect of it, then you need to make sure that aspect is front and center, and you include that in all your marketing, and it's a central part of the app. So I think that's really good advice. Yeah. And I think the other thing is that people don't, if the only thing you've got is an original idea, and it's the originality of the idea that you think is so powerful and not your ability to execute it, then that's actually not much of an asset anyway, because it's actually your ability to make the thing really good in the end that makes it work. I always give the example of the very first iPod. It's, they cobbled together this, it was very beautiful design, but they cobbled together the idea of a rotary dial from digital synths from the 80s. It was not the first music player that had a hard disk in it, but the way they executed it with, I think Johnny Ive was involved, wasn't he? Tony Fadell and Steve Jobs made it work so well as a whole that everyone just wanted to have one. And it's about the execution, not just some clever idea.
Yeah. Exactly. Facebook wasn't the first social network. Google wasn't the first search engine. Instagram wasn't the first picture sharing. None of these huge sites now were the first to do it. They just did it better than everybody else. And so, it's all about execution. No need to worry about talking about your idea, in my view. And I think, it's very easy to bring up as well. If someone asks, how are you doing? What are you up to? And whether that's a friend or a complete stranger, you can just simply, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm thinking about doing. And it's a conversation we can have with almost everybody we meet, and it can be really useful.
Yeah. Great. So, and if there's one thing you wanted fledgling first-time app developers to know, although you wish perhaps you'd known when you started this whole journey, what do you think that would be?
Don't worry about getting it right. So it's an iterative process. You need to have, if you're going to put something out there to proper user testing, that needs to be good enough. But good enough is good. Is what to aim for, not perfect. And I think there's a real danger in trying to make it too good.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a really important point. So if people want to find Smoke-Free app, it's on both the app stores, I guess.
If you search for Smoke-Free.
Good. Yeah. And you've got a website about it, haven't you?
We do. It's very old website. We're rebuilding it, so please don't judge me for that. But yes, Smoke-Free, smokefreeapp.com.
Well, thanks, David. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you lending your story to the book as well, because it's really it's a great one. I think it's fantastic what you've done.
Thanks so much, John. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.